I chose to train with Diana. I knew her personally and knew that she would be able to connect with me the best. In her place, Sarah vowed to train the Incubi. Well, that's interesting. If we hadn't picked her, she would have been training with our boo. Diana brought me to the Grand Hall, which was originally set for her and Sarah. Being that this was a special circumstance, Diana took control of the space and gave Sarah and the Incubi another room to train in. As I stepped in, I felt the air in the room shift to almost a cold, intense tone. Diana, who stood on the far side of the room, stared at me with her one visible red eye.
Tell me why you want me, of all people, to train you.
I felt a shiver run down my spine as I listened to her question. Why was she suddenly cold towards me? She wasn't using any magic to enthrall me or force me to answer, so I let the answer come out naturally. Oh boy. 'Cause I trust you. Weird as that sounds, probably. But I mean, I don't know anybody else here, so... And my dreams tell me to trust you. Diana stared at me, trying to find any sort of sign that I was lying or spouting a nonsense answer. When she found no such sign, she let out a sigh.
I will not go easy on you. I hope you realize that.
You should. I don't mind. It's fine. This is what we're here for. Diana shook her head before forming a small steel circlet in her hand. It was a gorgeous black color with a light lavender designs running around it. I stared in awe as Diana slowly walked over, holding it out for me to take.
Remember, this training is to make sure that you know how to defend yourself. This is not about you becoming a fighter.
I know that, but what is this?
Something that you'll like, I promise.
I took the ring from her hand and examined it as she stepped away. It was lighter than I expected, but that was probably because of its magical qualities. I swung it a couple of times through the open air, getting the feel of it. There was nothing really special about it. It looked like a bracelet. If there was a joke here, I was missing it. It's a bracelet.
Very good. At least your eyes work.
I glared, pursing my lips. Really? Diana shook her head.
Succubus magic draws from our feelings of pleasure, happiness, and overall euphoria. When focused through an object, such as a bracelet, it can become a weapon or a shield.
I stared at the ring, imagining such a thing. Would it become a sword? What about a large shield? She did say this training was meant for self-defense. Diana backed away from me, holding her arms out.
Try throwing it in front of you. Focus your energy into the metal, and the circlet will absorb it.
What? I tilted my head before looking to the circlet and twirling it in my hand. It was light enough. However, I had to focus my energy into it, as strange as that sounded. It was like giving energy to my fiancé. Should be easy. I stared at the circlet, seeing it glow ever so slightly as energy softly began to run through my body and into my hand. It was a very interesting sight to see, but I continued until I felt that it was enough. At last, I chucked the circlet in front of me, only to gasp at the result. In front of me formed a large ring of circlets around my body, hovering in the air like a protective circle. Diana smirked and summoned her saber, rushing at me. Ah! I instinctively held up my arms, but was surprised to hear the clashing of steel against steel. I looked up to see Diana's weapon completely wrapped in a chain of circlets that erupted from my barrier, trying to pull it from her hand.
Behold, your new weapon!
Diana released the weapon and jumped back, only to charge at me again with a bare fist. However, I watched as the circlets around me formed a chain wall between me and Diana, causing her flying punch to impact the barrier. Diana kept this up, showing me the different ways the circlet protected me and aided me. Eventually, however, the circlet fused back into one and dropped to the floor. As Diana panted slightly, she pointed at it.
It stores your energy, and uses it as you demand. Throwing it in front of you will automatically make it a shield. Holding it in your hand and arcing it will form a whip.
I picked up the circlet and stared at it, surprised to see it as such. More of my energy flowed into it, and I indeed formed a chain whip in my hand, glowing a gold and lavender color. Wow. Taking a breath, Diana straightened up and summoned her saber.
Come on, we have work to do.
I nodded and prepared a stance, ready to attack. And it's nighttime. We worked for hours, endlessly going back and forth between offense and defense with my circlet. As the day turned into night, I felt wave upon wave of exhaustion hit me. Diana chuckled as I slammed my back against the wall and tried to catch my breath.
Go rest up and take a breath. Come back when you're ready.
I nodded and rushed out of the room, finding the kitchen and getting some water. It was a little bit of a trek, but I knew Diana wouldn't be waiting long. Oops. I merely walked out of the room for a moment. I didn't expect to walk back into the grand hall to be face to face with a large black sphere. What the... Red lightning seemed to zip around its surface as it emitted a dark and evil glow. I felt fear shake my core simply staring at it. I was stunned. Where was Diana? Why was there a black sphere in the middle of the training room? What the hell was going on? Let's go check it out, because we're Angel. I had to check it out. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. I walked into the room and shut the door behind me, not wanting to freak out any passing people. As I stepped towards the sphere, I could faintly hear echoes trickle from it.
Don't be such a stubborn bitch! You can't deny me for much longer.
Oh no. I'm a little worried.
What the hell do you want?
Diana? None of this was making sense. I continued stepping towards the sphere and barely noticed the room shift around me with each step forward. It wasn't nauseating, but I definitely felt a little dizzy. Still, I continued forward. Hey, Diana's music. I found myself in a purple and black void. Dark shapes in the void looked like trees and wildlife, but I couldn't have been sure. Something was going on, and Diana was somewhere within this new place.
You know very well what I want. I want the same thing you want, that you keep denying. I still don't know what the hell you are talking about!
Is Diana arguing with herself? I followed Diana's voice into the dark to see her standing off against herself? It's the anti-Diana. Something was off already. One of the Dianas, who I could tell was the real succubus, stood full of tension and rage, while the other Diana practically emanated dark energy and had a devilish smirk painted across her face. Strangely enough, I somehow recognized the evil-looking Diana.
How long are you going to keep up this charade, Azayur? Every time you look at that human, you can't help but feel so angry. You can't hide it from me.
Kinda glad I picked Diana as my trainer. This is interesting stuff.
I know what you're trying to do. It won't work. I know what you are. What am I then, oh wise one? You're a fragment of the Demon Lord's madness. You only exist to haunt me after all of these years, fighting against that bastard. That's what I get when I clash swords with him one too many times. Am I now? Really? And if you are wrong? I know I'm not. What if I was a real part of your soul, just wanting to be released after being held back for so long? You once accepted me, you know, when you went to the human world. Of course, that muse had to write that into the human story for you to fully accept me.
I stared wide-eyed. What the hell? What was this creature talking about? The real Diana glared, baring her teeth at her copy. In her hands formed her saber, glowing in almost unnatural purple color in the void.
You don't exist, and that is final.
The evil Diana smirked wider, forming a saber of her own that was laced in black mist.
Whatever you say, dearie. You'll accept me eventually. And when you do, I'll make sure you become the best demon queen this world has ever known.
Diana practically snarled before charging at the copy of her, swinging her saber at her opponent in rage. With a parry, the battle began. Diana and the copycat clashed swords over and over, one full of rage, the other full of playful disinterest. Excuse me, I feel like I'm getting hiccups. Ahem. Diana was giving a solid offensive, but each attack she struck was blocked by her target with almost disgusting ease. I wanted to step in, but something in my gut kept me back. Why? Diana and the copycat eventually slammed their sabers together in a deadlock. The copycat, however, leaned in, smirking widely.
Just give up already. You know you need me, so you can't kill me. What are you saying? You know very well that I am the only thing that's keeping you from breaking down. It's more convenient when your peers don't even know how weak you are.
What the hell was she talking about? The copycat pressed into Diana's saber, making Diana lean back with wide eyes.
You couldn't even save your family from dying. It's all your fault, and you know it. You didn't have the strength or the guts to kill the human and take the boys by force. Was the life of that human really worth the lives of your family? Your baby sister? If I had killed her, then the angels would have come after me.
So why did you kill me in that one ending, lady? Lady, you fed me to your pit beast. Lady!
Such a pure and golden heart. Let's see how far that pure-hearted act gets you when the demon lord comes howling for you. Shut up already!
Diana pushed roughly against the copycat, forcing it back before swinging her saber in a wide arc at it. With ease, the copycat slid to the side and brought her saber back with a dark chuckle.
You better try harder, or else you're going to die!
The evil Diana swiped her blade at the real Diana's gut, trying to cut her open, but missed as Diana jumped back. This was insane. What was happening? I didn't want to just sit here and do nothing. Diana was in odds against some sort of evil being. The more I looked at it, the more I recognized the Diana that appeared in the human world and tried to take the boys away. Was that not the real Diana that I met then? I shook my head. Now was not the time to worry about that. I had to do something. Now don't scream her name, you're just gonna distract her, and then she's gonna get split open. I needed to stay quiet. If I stepped in, who knew what would happen? The evil Diana could jump for me instead, and I was not ready to take her on. The two Dianas continued to clash weapons, the ringing of steel bouncing through the space and fading as an echo. At last, Diana finally swung at a surprise angle, slashing a tear through her copycat stomach. Hooray! No blood came out of the wound, as if the copycat was a mere husk. The wounded target, however, grinned.
So you can hurt me. Very interesting. I'm afraid that this little rebellion won't do it all. This isn't your story, after all. Do you think I don't know that? We'll meet again soon, my dear.
So many questions, as usual, when it comes to Diana. With a chuckle, the copycat vanished, fading into a black shadow and melting into the ground. As she disappeared, the world around us dimmed before brightening back up into the hall. Diana let out a sigh before turning her head to me with a glare. Shit.
Why did you come in?
Diana continued to gaze at me, her anger tearing into my eyes and soul. This was definitely something she wanted to hide. However, it was too late now. I stared back at Diana, trying to remain unfazed at her anger. I wanted to know what was going on. I saw you in this black orb thing and needed to see if you were all right.
It's none of your concern. I can handle it.
Diana walked towards the exit of the room, making the saber in her hand vanish.
We're done for the day.
Huh? What are you...
I said we're done.
Diana made her way to the door and looked back over her shoulder at me, her eye glowing gold.
Speak of this to anyone, and I will send you back to the human world as a corpse.
But I thought the angels were gonna kill you if you did that.
Despite Diana helping me before, I could tell that she was serious just from the growl in her voice. I decided to keep my mouth shut. Better not to test her patience or trust on the matter. Still, I was worried about her. She apparently had to deal with a lot, and partly because of me. I stared at the ground, unsure of what to do. For now, I would drop it and would return to it tomorrow. I was exhausted and needed to bathe and sleep. I returned to my room that night, wondering how things had come to this. My body was exhausted, but my mind was running 100 miles an hour. I had to physically be near the Demon Lord when he died? How specific was this curse? As I sat on the bed, I ran my hands through my hair and over my face, attempting to ease the nerves beneath my skin. Despite it not working as well as I'd hoped, I found my mind organizing my thoughts constructively. I was training for a reason, after all. I was working to make sure I survived this war and was able to go home with James, the man I loved. However, just thinking about him brought back memories of Sarah screaming and Diana crying. Was it really James's fault that Diana's family was killed? All James wanted was freedom. As I thought of him, James entered the room and spotted me, a tired smile growing on his face. I smiled back, matching his exhaustion.
You look worn out.
So do you. James chuckled slightly and walked over, sitting beside me. I felt myself instinctively scoot closer to his body and lay my head on his shoulder. That simple move made my body almost sink into his. When did James ever feel this warm? James's arm wrapped around my waist and pulled me closer. As he placed a kiss on my head, I could only hum happily.
So, about sleeping tonight.
I looked up to James, wondering where the question came from. It was random, and I didn't understand what he meant until I stretched back into my thoughts. The angels. James nodded. He was right. How was I supposed to sleep when angels were after me? They could reach into my dreams and remove my memories without me being able to fight back. At least not without Sarah's or Diana's help. It wasn't fair to depend on them, especially after remembering what Sarah confessed this morning. James, however, gently turned me in his arms to face him. I looked up at him, wondering what he was up to. What are you doing? I had to ask. I trusted him, but I still wanted to know what he was thinking and planning. James continued to stare into my eyes before frowning softly.
I want to try and do something, but I'm not sure if it will work. It's been years since I've used pure demon magic, after all.
What did he mean? Was he going to cast some sort of spell on me? What kind of spell was he going to use? I stared at James, unsure of the whole thing, but James kissed my forehead.
Please, trust me, love.
I do. It took a moment for me to slowly ease my curious nerves. James just wanted to help, and if this was the way, then this was the way. I nodded, giving him the okay to do whatever he needed to do. James gently ran his thumbs over the sides of my face, tracing over the edges of my eyes and cheekbones. I felt small wisps of energy dance over my nerves and closed my eyes gently, becoming lost in the sensation. I could faintly see golden light piercing through the darkness of my eyelids, so I kept my eyes closed, confident that it was the best thing to do. A warmth enveloped my head, filling my thoughts with pure calm and serenity. It felt almost too unreal. I could go for some of that right now. That'd be nice. As the light faded away, I opened my eyes to meet the loving gaze of my incubus. He gently caressed my cheeks and placed his forehead against mine, closing his eyes with a smile. I felt joy wash over me as he held my head close to him.
There. That should work.
What did you do?
A small mind barrier spell. It's been a long time since I've used a spell like that. Simple, but hopefully effective.
I nodded before gently nuzzling James. It had to work. It absolutely had to work. My heart swelled in hope that everything would be okay. Give him a kiss before you sleep, you doofus. I gently stretched up and kissed him softly on the lips. He gently kissed me back and held my head to him, pressing me to his chest lovingly. I could feel him sneak a bit of energy from me, but I didn't mind. You scoundrel. As we both lay back in bed to sleep that night, James's spell was tested. Floating in the darkness, a dream was never the same every time. Sometimes I'd be floating in water. Other times I would be flying through air. The experience over my nerves changed every time, and I could never prepare myself for what dream or nightmare would come. That night, however, I found myself once again in a jail cell. Great. Huh? I didn't understand. Why was I here again? Why was I once again trapped in a cell? I looked down at my body to see my regular clothes still on. There was no shackle attached to my ankle, and I was free as I could be. That was different. Still, I had to be on guard. Are my actions changing what maybe could happen in a bad ending? Like, the more honest and loving I am with James, the better, the more my dream will change to reflect that. That'd be interesting. I quickly stood and walked up to the cell door, running my hands over the metal. At the mere touch of my hand... Oh, excuse me, my voice just cracked. Better drink some water. Ahem. Pardon me? At the mere touch of my hands, the door slowly swung open, releasing me and allowing me to leave its dark cage. Another difference. I stepped forward, looking up and down the hall I was in. There were no screams, no cries. It was as silent as the grave. That worried me and made me feel uneasy, despite the relief I felt that the dream was not the same as the nightmare I had had before. At least that's what I had hoped. Oh no, this might be worse. A sudden cry of pain echoed down the hall, causing me to look over in the direction it erupted from. My heart stopped for a moment, recognizing the voice. James? My body rushed on its own towards his voice, now desperate to find him. Why was he in pain? Who was hurting him? At last I arrived at a door barely open a crack. I peeked in and gasped at what I saw. Oh no, my boo! Oh boy. Someone crossed you! I'm sorry I had to say it. Bleh. Chained to the far wall was James, his body twitching in pain as he desperately attempted to free himself, I guess. I stared in shock as my eyes took in a cross burnt onto his chest that seemed to sizzle over his flesh.
It's
the angel again.
Never.
At James's reply to the voice, the mark on his chest began to glow a hot red and yellow color, burning further into his skin. I unconsciously ran my hand over my chest in sympathy, wincing at the sight. Bustin'! Help your boo! It's a dream, anyway. I needed to stop whatever this was. Dream or not, James was in pain. I threw the door open and rushed in, revealing everything in the room. However, the only person in it was James himself, who was now staring at me wide-eyed in fear. James!
Stay back!
The mark began to burn brighter on his skin, ushering me to rush forward and pull on his bonds to set him free. The steel bonds held fast against the wall, not moving an inch.
I would rather burn than let you touch her!
I stared at James wide-eyed. Was he doing this to protect me? Was this happening because of the protection spell he cast on me? Oh, interesting. Oh no, James! I didn't get a chance to think on it long, however. A bright flash of light erupted from James's body, and I shut my eyes, blinded by the sight. James! My eyes refused to open until I felt myself awaken. I shot up in bed, gasping and clutching my chest. My heart pounded inside of my ribs at a frightening pace as I recalled images from the dream. Despite it not ending with me being attacked, it ended with James getting hurt. As I thought of James, I quickly looked over to see him still fast asleep. Luckily, I didn't scream to wake him this time, so I felt relieved that he wasn't ripped from his own rest. My heartbeat began to slow as I silently took a deep breath and let it out. It was a dream. I ran my palms over my eyes and rubbed them gently, calming down at last. I had to get through this. I had to keep my sanity about me. I also had to drink some water. Ugh. Yet, something in my gut wouldn't let me let this dream go. Something inside of me ushered me to keep thinking about it, as if I was missing something. Was I overlooking something important? How could that have been? I shook my head and slowly laid back down, curling up against James and closing my eyes again. I had to rest. I had to let it go for now. I would figure this out later. Darkness greeted me again, and I was safe until the morning. Thank goodness for that, at least. I woke up in James's arms once more, slowly blinking the sleep from my eyes as my vision focused on his chest. As I stared, I vaguely pictured the cross burn over his skin, but was relieved to find no such thing there in reality. It had been just a dream. I looked up to see James smiling down at me softly before he kissed my forehead.
Good morning. Did you have a good rest?
Ish? I remembered the nightmare and suddenly became unsure of whether or not the truth was something he wanted to hear. I did rest, but I did wake up from that nightmare during the night. Was it worth telling him? It's always worth telling him. I had a nightmare again. I couldn't lie. I shook my head and the smile on James's face disappeared. As much as it would make him unhappy, it was better to let him know the result of his spell. Yeah. I wasn't attacked by angels or anything, but you were.
I was.
I ran my hand over his chest, imagining the burn from the dream emblazoned on his skin. You were bolted to a wall and had a cross cut into your chest. It was burning, and you were arguing with a voice in the air.
A cross. So it was an angel's work.
Why, though? James closed his eyes in thought, trying to figure out why himself. But as he opened his eyes to look at me, his smile did not return.
The spell I cast to protect you placed an image of me in your mind, like a guardian. If they came, my spell would have forced them to attack me instead. Luckily, it worked.
James ran his hand over my cheek.
However, you still went through a nightmare, and for that I am sorry.
Hey, at least I wasn't attacked, though. No, don't be. You protected me. So the dream was part of his spell. I felt relieved that it worked. The side effect was an image of James being hurt. At least it wasn't actually him. I ran my hand over James's cheek, smiling softly. Thank you. At last, James's smile reappeared before he softly took my hand and kissed my palm.
All for you, love.
A knock on the door, however, interrupted our moment together again.
Who is it?
Diana, I have food for you both.
Interesting. I looked at the door as James called out for her to enter. The door opened to reveal Diana with 2 plates of food, the same meal we had the day prior. She walked over and handed the plates to us before stepping back.
I assume that you both had a good rest.
Yes, actually. We've worked out the angel problem for now.
Diana raised her eyebrow, crossing her arms, but nodded in reply. Looking at Diana, however, I could see small dark circles beneath her eyes. Did she not rest last night? Let's ask her. We're friends. Ish. Diana, are you okay? You look worn out. Diana stared at me for a moment before shaking her head.
I didn't get much rest. I spent most of the night dealing with some uninvited guests.
Oh, what kind?
Should we be worried?
No, I have everything under control.
A part of me didn't believe her, but I nodded regardless. If she didn't wish to talk about it, then it was better not to ask about it any further. Diana turned on her heel and began to walk out of the room, but she stopped at the archway and looked back to me.
If any angels come your way again, tell me.
With that foreboding warning, Diana left, leaving James and I unable to reply. What could we say to that? James had already placed a spell on me to protect me, and he seemed to be just fine. We would be fine, right? James and I ate our food before separating to train.